What's up, all you cool cats and kittens? Welcome back to the second episode of The Rundown with Payton and Marcus. I'm Marcus. He's Payton. What's up, man? How you doing?
Doing good, bro. I'm really excited to do this show, and I'm also excited for this fantastic matchup we have on Thursday Night Football tonight.
Thursday Night Football tonight, I think, is going to be probably game of the year. And I know it's week 2, but this has the potential to be the game of the year this week. We'll get into Thursday Night Football and the rest of our general week 2 picks at the end of the show. I want to start the show though talking about some college football. We saw 3 massive upsets in college football this week. It was a great weekend to be a Sun Belt football team. App State took down Texas A&M 17-14. Marshall took down number 8 ranked Notre Dame 26-21. And Georgia Southern beat Nebraska, which led to Nebraska firing head coach Scott Frost. Which of these 3 upsets was the most surprising?
A part of me wants to say that it was Notre Dame, but it's really not, because if you really think about it, Notre Dame is not a good team. They were not good against Ohio State. They were good for a half defensively. Offensively, they were garbage. I was a little bit surprised about the Nebraska thing, but Nebraska was already a dumpster fire. I was most surprised with App State beating Texas A&M. Texas A&M was a team that had like the number 1 recruiting class, and they were ranked in the top 5 in the preseason, and you're getting beat by an unranked team. That's unprecedented right there. So I would say the most surprising upset was Texas A&M. They're all surprising, but if I had to pick a most surprising one, Texas A&M would be the most surprising.
I agree with you. I was going to say Notre Dame, but then I remembered we're talking about Notre Dame.
They
here.
suck. They're overrated.
Notre Dame is terrible. Texas A&M is the big one for me. App State, good football team, absolutely. And Appalachian State, the school is not going to be able to survive after the celebration that they threw after that win. Props to them, they deserve it. Texas A&M, this is a team that I think a lot of people thought would be potentially in the college football playoff this year. We saw the whole thing with Texas A&M going back and forth with Alabama in the offseason, leading into college football, and like how that whole thing, the whole NIL thing. So there's already heat. There's a lot of eyes on Texas A&M this season for the first time in a long time. And to lose to an unranked opponent in App State 17-14 just isn't a good look. Not when you look across other top 10 teams. We saw Ohio State get the job done 45-12 against Arkansas State. We saw Georgia blank Samford. We saw Alabama win a close one against Texas, right? Number 4 ranked Michigan beat Hawaii 56-10. Clemson got the job done. Oklahoma got the job done. Baylor did lose an upset to BYU, but USC even got the job done. Then you look at teams that are just outside the top 10, where you're talking about Oklahoma State, who got to win there, Utah got to win, Michigan State got to win, Miami got to win. Like every team in the top 10 except for Texas A&M and of course Notre Dame, who's ranked number 8, and Baylor on our mind, like won their games, and all of those teams were playing unranked opponents, and they got the job done. This is not a good look for Texas A&M as it pertains to the college football playoff. This is not a good look for Texas A&M as far as where they're going to rank heading into this upcoming week with the poll, with the AP poll. This one was absolutely the most surprising. Like I said, though, I would say Notre Dame, but this is Notre Dame we're talking about here.
And I'm glad that Notre Dame is now unranked. In the
absolutely.
Poll. I mean, it needed to happen. It needed to happen. You can't start off 0-2 like that in the fashion that they did and be a ranked team. And every year after year, Notre Dame is the most overrated college football team on the planet. And now they're facing reality because they're just rightly rated as a not so great football team.
Yeah. And the other thing too about Notre Dame has always been in this no man's land because they don't have a home, right? They're not in a Power 5 conference, not in the Notre Dame has been independent. Being independent makes those games that you have against Power 5 ranked opponents or top 25 ranked opponents, top 10 ranked opponents, whatever, that much more important because you can't say, oh, this is the SEC and the SEC is always tough. You don't have that benefit of having a Big Ten schedule where you're going to see Ohio State and Michigan and teams like that. You don't have the benefit of even being in the ACC or the Pac-12, which is, as we talked about last week, is done for anyway. Like, you don't have that conference liability to kind of fall back on and say, well, these are my opponents and this is what I've done in the conference. So for Notre Dame, the road to the college football playoff for Notre Dame is always going to be the hardest, even with the 12-team college football playoff being introduced in 2026, because they don't have a conference. Maybe they join a conference between now and then, but as it stands right now, Notre Dame continually losing games that either they shouldn't be losing like we did last weekend, or games where they were right in there and just couldn't figure out to get the job done like we saw them against Ohio State on opening weekend just isn't a good look for Notre Dame. Let's move on from college football. Let's talk about the NFL. Lamar Jackson made it crystal clear that this past Friday, was going to be the last day that he talked about the contract with the Baltimore Ravens. As it stands, Lamar Jackson rejected the Baltimore Ravens contract offer, which means that he is now officially playing out the final year of his rookie deal without a contract. I do believe he might be the first player in NFL history to have won an MVP on his rookie deal and not get an extension before the rookie deal expires. So this is all types of history and not the good kind. Lamar's been focused on playing football and getting the job done for this season. Let the contract stuff be in the past. He's focused on the here and the now. But let's talk about the future a little bit. Is this potentially Lamar Jackson's last season as a Baltimore Raven?
I think it could be if some crazy stuff happens, but I doubt it. I think that Lamar is going to realize that the Ravens, they took the chance on him and they formed the offense completely around him. And I think the Ravens are going to realize, okay, we got lucky here when we drafted Lamar Jackson, and he means the world to us because our whole offense is tailored around him. The entire Baltimore Ravens offense is Lamar Jackson. The whole thing runs through Lamar Jackson. You cannot lose a guy like that because guess what? If you don't pay him the money, you're going to have to find someone else. And you're not going to get someone else better than Lamar Jackson. It's hard. It's hard to find someone better. I think the Ravens end up finding a way to make a deal with Lamar Jackson that works for both Lamar and the Ravens. I think Lamar just wants to play this year and ball out and have a chance to get an even bigger deal going into next year because we all know last year he had the injury problems and the Ravens missed the playoffs. They were last in the division because of that. Lamar wants to bet on himself to raise his value even more than it already is.
Look, I mean, that's not a bad thing to do. The last two quarterbacks we saw bet on themselves, they won in the end, right? We saw Kirk Cousins bet on himself in Washington. He got tagged twice. He moves on to Minnesota. He gets, at the time, what was the most lucrative contract for a quarterback in NFL history, right? Fast forward a couple years later, Dak Prescott has the whole contract issue. He breaks his ankle in a regular season game 2 years ago. He gets paid. So we have seen quarterbacks bet on themselves and it work out for them in the long run. They get paid. Here's my one apprehension about this whole scenario, right? Obviously, Lamar Jackson is very valuable to the Baltimore Ravens as a franchise. Obviously, this offense is built around Lamar Jackson. This offense doesn't work with anybody not named Lamar Jackson at the quarterback position. That's just how it works. But my one concern is Lamar Jackson at any given point, because of the way that he plays football, his season can be over in a heartbeat. Because, look, I get it. There's nothing wrong with the way that Lamar plays basketball or football. What we have to acknowledge is because of how he plays football, he is more susceptible to getting hurt, more susceptible to big hits, more susceptible to potentially season and or career-ending injuries, unlike a guy like a Tom Brady who operates mostly in the pocket, or an Aaron Rodgers, or a Justin Herbert, or even, Pat Mahomes. The only quarterback in the NFL that plays a comparable play style at the level that Lamar Jackson does is Kyler Murray, and there's still a massive gap between Lamar Jackson's productivity with his legs than there is with Kyler Murray and his legs, right? That's the fact of the matter. I love Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is electrifying. He's nothing like any other quarterback we've ever seen in football, but I do have concerns about Lamar's long-term future, especially because there's no guaranteed money here. He's not owed anything this season. Like, if he gets hurt, he's not getting paid. Like, the guaranteed money is almost going to be next to nothing. I do think Lamar Jackson should have tried to get his deal as much as possible. So let's play devil's advocate. Let's say this is Lamar's last season in Baltimore. He's done, which I don't think that. I'm pretty sure if they can't come to a contract agreement next season, Baltimore's just going to put the tag on Lamar because it'll be inexcusable to let him walk without that, at least one tag. Where's Lamar playing?
Miami. Miami's the answer, Marcus. Come on. Miami? Are you kidding me? They don't believe in Tua. Tua, and I like Tua. I want him to do well. I think he's a good guy. I think he's a great teammate. But are we really convinced with Tua right now? Not really. He played okay against the Patriots. The Patriots are going to suck this year, by the way. And now we're going to see him play against a good team, Baltimore. We're going to see him playing against Baltimore this week. And I think they're going to be exposed. I think Lamar wants to go back home to South Florida and play with the Dolphins. He's already hinted at it before on Twitter. And if there was a team that Lamar was going to leave Baltimore for, it's the Miami Dolphins. Plus, oh my gosh, could you imagine Mike McDaniel coaching Lamar Jackson in that offense? They would be able to do so much on the ground. Now you have Tyreek Hill. This team would be electric in Miami with Lamar Jackson.
Are Miami Super Bowl contenders if Lamar ends up in Miami?
Yes. Yes, they are. That defense looked
Really?
incredible yesterday. They looked deep. They looked hungry. They played hard. They played fast. And they made the Patriots, they stopped them from doing anything. And the offense looked great as well. The running game was decent. Even with Tua, the passing game was efficient, and it was their first game under Mike McDaniel's system. Normally, new head coaches don't come in and play that well against Bill Belichick, the greatest coach of all time, and they did.
Yep.
If you add Lamar Jackson to that team, which even right now is a clear upgrade from Tua, yes, they can make some noise.
I don't know. It's Miami, and they're in the same division with the Bills. I'll back you on this one. I'll hedge my bets because it is the Miami Dolphins, but I think I'll agree with you there that they might be Super Bowl contenders. Let's talk about some teams that
I don't want to interrupt, but they would be the most electrifying team in football.
Because absolutely. I'll go there with you. Electricity to the max.
Exactly. Tyreek Hill is one of those guys. It doesn't matter where he gets the ball on the field. You think, oh my gosh, he could score. And it's kind of the same thing with Lamar Jackson. Whether it's throwing or whether it's running, you think, okay, he could probably score right now because he just has the ball in his hands. They would be the most dangerous offense in the entire NFL. Absolutely.
Let's talk about, since we're talking about Super Bowl, let's talk about some team that's we kind of thought might be vying for the Super Bowl this season, but they didn't look that good in the opening week of the season. So we got 3 tiers here for the panic meter. Panic, on the edge of your seat, or relax. All right, those are the 3 options: relax, edge of your seat, or full on panic. Los Angeles Rams, where should the panic meter be for the defending Super Bowl champion Rams?
That offensive line looked horrible in the season opener. I mean, they looked terrible. Yeah. I'm panicking. I am panicking. They missed Andrew Whitworth more than they missed Odell. I mean, oh my goodness, what the Bills did to them on Thursday night on the season opener in their own home stadium. Yeah. Wow. That's panic time. And Matthew Stafford, it doesn't matter if he has a lingering elbow issue or not. I get Matthew Stafford's a tough guy. But nobody, no quarterback in the league could have a good season with an offensive line that plays like that the entire year. Yes, based off what I've seen from the Rams, I'm absolutely panicking even just after week 1.
Let's talk about the team they played in the Super Bowl and they defeated. It's the Cincinnati Bengals. Joe Burrow played the worst game of his life. 5 total turnovers, 4 picks, a fumble. It would have been 5 picks if not for a pass interference call on the defense. Are we relaxing? Are we on the edge of our seats? Are we panicking on the Cincinnati Bengals after week 1?
I'm relaxed on the Bengals still after week 1. And because even though they had all those turnovers and Joe Burrow played like crap, they still almost won. And if it wasn't for missed kicks, they would have won that football game despite all of the turnovers that they had. I am very relaxed on the Bengals, even though the offensive line didn't look like it was much improved like we thought it was. It's going to take some time. New pieces take time to gel. An offensive line is a unit. They all need to be working together, and this is their first time working together, and we saw it didn't work out in week 1. I think over the course of the year, they're going to gel. The Bengals are still going to be good no matter what.
And I 100% agree with you. You guys know how I feel about Joseph Lee Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. Let's talk about one that's quite personal to me. My Green Bay Packers got absolutely shellacked for the second year in a row in week 1, losing 23-7 to the division rival Minnesota Vikings. Justin Jefferson went off to the tune of 8 catches, 166 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Are we relaxing? Are we on the edge of our seats? Or are we panicking on the Green Bay Packers?
Hey, listen, you know Aaron Rodgers, RELAX, relax. And I'm relaxed on the Packers still. Aaron Rodgers, yeah, he had a rough game, but guess what? There's new pieces there, especially wide receivers. We saw Christian Watson drop what would have been a 75-yard
walk
touchdown.
in.
Yeah, And that kind of stuff happens, especially in week 1. And we saw this happen last year. They had a terrible week 1, the Packers did. They got absolutely destroyed by Jameis Winston and the Saints in week 1 of last year. And they went on to win their division. And Aaron Rodgers won his second consecutive MVP. So I'm relaxed on the Packers still. I think they're still going to be a good team. I think Matt LaFleur is a great coach. And Aaron Rodgers is obviously a great quarterback. Anytime you have a combo like that, you're going to win more games than you're going to lose. So I am absolutely still relaxed on the Packers.
Now, before we get into our pick, there are 2 more teams I want to talk about. One of these teams failed to win or lose. It was a draw against an inferior opponent in the division. The Indianapolis Colts couldn't beat the Houston Texans week 1, despite Jonathan Taylor having 161 yards, rushing. Are we relaxed? Are we on the edge of our seat? Or are we panicking about the Indianapolis Colts this season?
I'm a little bit on the edge of my seat on the Colts. They're going to win that division still. I think they're still going to win that division, but I don't think they're going to be very competitive in terms of like what they're going to do in the playoffs, because this division is awful. The AFC South has no wins right now, despite 2 of the teams playing against each other. So everyone's winless. They're going to win that division, but I'm on the edge of my seat in terms of what they could do against the AFC's elite teams.
And the very last one, which we all know is not a Super Bowl contender, but maybe it could have been, because there was a lot of positivity coming from the quarterback, and then we saw the quarterback get hurt, and he's going to be rushed back, because that is typical for this football team. The Dallas Cowboys didn't score a touchdown against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Sunday night, despite leading the league in scoring just last season. Obviously, a lot of that has to do with, of course, Dak Prescott getting hurt, but even before Dak Prescott get hurt, the offense did not look that good. Now we're looking at Cooper Rush being the starting quarterback for at least the next 6 to 8 weeks. Dak is not on IR, which I don't think is a good idea at all. Are we on the edge of our seats? Are we relaxed? Are we panicking on the Dallas Cowboys?
I'm panicking on the Dallas Cowboys. If it's best case scenario and Dak Prescott finds a way to come back in week 5, somehow, some way, finds a way to come back in week 5, the Dallas Cowboys are going to be 0-4. They have to play the Bengals next week. They have to play the Giants, and then I forget who they have to play. I think it's
they have
Commanders.
Washington and Philly in this.
Those are all losses with Cooper Rush at quarterback, unless they go out and they go and try to make a move for Jimmy G and they don't rush Dak Prescott back. The Cowboys season, stick a fork in it. They're done. It's over. I'm absolutely panicking on the Cowboys.
Now, I'm a pretty competitive guy, and it's only one game, and it's only been 1 week. But unfortunately, Payton does have a 1-game advantage on me. This is the pick'em from last week. As you can see, my undoing was, of course, the one game where we disagreed. Payton picked his beloved Browns to get the win on the road against the Panthers, and they did just that. So as you can see, Payton, after week 1, has a record of 11-4-1. Obviously, that one tie being from the Colts-Texans game. Prime time, we have the exact same record of 2-1, but our head-to-head record is different by a game, of course, because of the Browns and Panthers game. So I am 1 game behind Payton right now in what is our year-long weekly pick'em contest, which now brings us to week 2. Here's the thing about week 2. Just like last week, somehow, some way, Payton and I have picked the exact same teams to win games again.
We don't make the picks together. We don't make the picks together. We
Payton
both show each other the picks at the same time.
Payton sent me his picks at like 11 o'clock this morning. I made the graphic at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon as I was making my picks. So this is the pick'em for this week for NFL week 2. As you can see, we both have the Chargers, the Browns, the Lions, the Saints, the Panthers, the Steelers, the Colts, Ravens, Rams, 49ers, Bengals, Broncos, Raiders, Packers, and Bills getting the job done in week 2. The deciding game this week between whether I can tie things up with Payton after week 2 or whether Payton takes a 2-game lead entering week 3 is the Monday Night Football game, the second Monday Night Football game between the Vikings and the Eagles, who both won their respective week 1 games. So Payton picked the Vikings, as you can see. I picked the Eagles. Payton, why'd you pick the Vikings for this one?
Because you should know to pick the Vikings in this game. You watched them absolutely derail the reigning MVP.
Watch it. Watch it. All right.
You watch them do it.
Let's be polite here. Okay. Let's be polite.
Let's be polite. You
Let's
watched
be
it
polite.
happen with your own 2 eyes, and I did too. And guess what? The Minnesota Vikings are my pick to make the Super Bowl out of the NFC, and I think they are absolutely.
Wait a second. Time out.
I made this prediction on your show. Don't act like you're surprised.
But last week, I'm not. But let's just talk about that for a second. Last week, I told you and Germ on that same show that I have the Saints going to the Super Bowl. You both laughed at me and shook your head. The Saints are better than the Vikings. Can we be serious?
Whoa,
let's be serious. Let's be serious.
No.
Let's be serious.
Time out.
The Saints defensively are better than the Vikings. The Saints offensively have just about the same amount of weapons as the Vikings do. The only difference is Kirk Cousins is the quarterback for the Vikings and Jameis Winston is the quarterback for the Saints. That's the only difference. I trust the Saints defensively more than I trust the Vikings defensively, and I also trust the Saints in certain matchups because of their defense against the Vikings. Do you honestly believe they're going to see Kirk Cousins play the way he played week 1? Look, I get it, okay? The Packers looked absolutely terrible, but the Minnesota Vikings to the Super Bowl is absurd. Absolutely absurd. You know it, I know it. That might be even more absurd than me picking the Saints going to the Super Bowl. I just felt like we needed to address that real quick.
We all know I love me some Jameis Winston, all right? And we all know that I have repeatedly said that the comeback player of the year is on the Saints, whether it's going to be Michael Thomas or Jameis Winston, pick one. It might not after how Saquon Barkley played in week 1, but I still hold by that. And I love the Saints this year. I think they're going to be a very good team. But did you not watch what happened in week 1 of the Falcons? They almost lost that game. Now,
they had a lot of offensive line troubles, and they got it together in the second half.
I get that.
I would have liked to see them use Alvin Kamara a lot more, especially in the first half of that football game. But they won the football game, which is all that matters, is they won the game.
I get that, and I'll give you that. But I don't know how after week 1 you could say that they are for sure better than the Minnesota Vikings, who, by the way, probably have the offensive player of the year this year on their team, and Justin Jefferson.
Well, they
probably have the coach of the year on their team, and Kevin O'Connell. I'm telling you, rookie coaches win coach of the year all the time. It's a new trend.
Kevin O'Connell is not.
Kevin O'Connell's going to win Coach of the Year. I'm serious.
If there's one first-year coach that's going to be Coach of the Year, I'd pick Brian Dable to be Coach of the Year before Kevin O'Connell. Let's be serious. If the Giants, as wide open as the NFC East is at this point, if the Giants somehow muster up 8 games in that division and finish second, which is very possible because they're not that far off from the Commanders. Brian Dable has a legitimate argument to be Coach of the Year if Saquon stays healthy and plays good football, which he'll be comeback player of the year. And on top of that, if Daniel Jones is like a competent quarterback in the NFL, doesn't get hurt for 17 games, are you kidding me? Brian Dable 100% would have a much stronger claim to being Coach of the Year than Kevin O'Connell because the defense in Minnesota is still going to suck. This is going to be a one-sided football.
I don't think it will.
It's going to be a one-sided football team from start to finish.
Say that this defense is going to suck when it held the reigning MVP, back-to-back reigning MVP to only 7 points.
No David Bakhtiari.
There was no David Bakhtiari last year.
That's not the point. Okay, but the offensive line was healthy. We were missing 2 starting offensive linemen in week 1, and Alan Lazard was out because of the ankle. Despite all of that, Aaron Jones, even though he didn't get the ball much, Aaron Jones still averaged just about 10 yards per carry in that football game. Run defense, terrible. A.J. Dillon still had a good game, and he scored the lone touchdown that we did have against that team. I'm not saying the Vikings are going to be bad. I don't think that the Vikings on this offense alone is going to be enough to get them to the Super Bowl when you're talking about a defense is going to have to go against the Rams, the Packers, again, when they're fully healthy, the Bucks potentially, like the Eagles, which we're going to see potentially a playoff preview Monday night. This defense, I'm not sold just because of a terrible defensive game plan. Why is Jair? You mean to tell me if Jair Alexander is following Justin Jefferson all across the field the way he wanted to, that Justin Jefferson is going to go off for 8 touchdowns for 166 yards and 2 touchdowns? No, it's not happening. Justin Jefferson's not averaging 20 yards of reception and a touchdown every 4 catches on Jair Alexander, the second best cover corner in football. Payton, you know this, and I know this. Get it. Look, a win is a win is a win is a win. But here's the thing. The Vikings took advantage of what was a terrible defensive game plan for my Packers, and I'll acknowledge that. But This defense is not going to be able to keep that up. This defense isn't going to be able to just completely shut down this offense again in Lambeau later this season. They're not going to be able to shut down Tampa Bay if they see Tampa Bay. They're not going to be able to shut down the Rams if they see the Rams. They might not even be able to shut down the 49ers offensively if Trey Lance is as advertised plus a little bit more. There are a lot of potent offenses in the NFC that could give the Vikings a lot of trouble. Great game for them. I do agree with you that Justin Jefferson is going to be electric, and Kirk Cousins could very well play the best season of his career this year. But the Super Bowl, no. I like my chances with the Saints than I do with the Vikings by a mile for sure.
I'll give you that. I'll give you that the Saints, I think, have a better defense than the Vikings. But I think that the Vikings offense surpasses them almost by a lot, by a good amount. And I think
the Saints have a solid 1-2 punch in the backfield that we've seen be successful before with Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram. They have 3 really talented wide receivers, not to mention all the guys that were on the roster last year had to step up in Mike Thomas's absence that you can use as gadget players. And Taysom Hill played incredibly in this game. And I get it, it's against the Falcons, and it is Taysom Hill. We can't expect that all the time. No. But if they're going to keep using Taysom Hill the way they did with all these trick plays, all these gadget plays, that could be another X factor for this offense. This offense, it's not by a mile, but I would take the Saints offense as a whole if you're looking at the skill position players over the Vikings. Obviously, the Vikings have the better quarterback, and that's where the nod goes to the Vikings. And I'll give you that. But if we're looking at the skill position players as a whole, I'm absolutely taking the Saints skill position players offensively over the Vikings skill position offensively, because once you get past Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, and Dalvin Cook, who else is there? Irv Smith Jr.? Alexander Madison doesn't get any run unless Dalvin's hurt. What are we talking? The Saints offense is so much more deep, it's so much more potent, and it's so much more well-balanced.
But depth doesn't matter unless there's injuries. Depth is, the Vikings have more firepower than the Saints do. Straight up. They do. And you know that I love the Saints. I think they do.
Do they?
Dude, for the reasons that you just mentioned.
Who's their third receiver?
KJ Osborne, I think. I'm not sure.
Is KJ Osborne better than Chris Olave? No, he's not.
I don't really care because
he's not.
Michael Thomas is great, and he had a great comeback, but he's still coming back. He didn't have nearly as great of a game. Any of those receivers combined didn't have as great of a game as Justin Jefferson did in week 1.
Because Justin Jefferson had 166 yards. Of course not. But generally speaking, on paper, you would absolutely take Michael Thomas before you take Adam Thielen if you're drafting wide receivers and all receivers are available. 100%. Yeah. And you can make an argument that maybe I wouldn't personally, but there could be an argument made that if we're talking about just for being a secondary guy, there's some people out there that might take Jarvis Landry ahead of Adam Thielen. I personally wouldn't do that, but the argument there can be made. This offense has 3 really solid receivers and a really solid 1-2 punch in the backfield. The Vikings can't say that.
Okay, well, I strongly disagree, but let's bring it back to just this game, just the Monday Night Football game, because the Saints don't really matter in this equation here.
They don't. We definitely got off the rails here.
Vikings versus Eagles, right? The way that the Eagles played defensively against the Lions scares me because the Vikings have a better overall offense, I think, than the Eagles do. I also think that they have a better overall defense. While Philly might have a little bit more talent on the defensive side of the ball, I think that you are extremely sleeping on the Vikings defense this year. I think they had a lot of young picks from the last few years in the draft. They've been drafting heavily on defense. They got Zadarius Smith now. Danielle Hunter's coming back healthy. This Vikings defense is going to be much improved than it was last year. And I think that it's going to show on Monday night when they're playing a dynamic Philly run game and a Philly offense, and I think they're going to hold them to a fair amount of points. They're not going to drop 35 like they did on the Lions, because whatever you have to say about the Vikings defense, it is not nearly as bad as that defense there in Detroit.
Sure, but their run defense is bad. They allow nearly 10 yards per carry against the Packers, and we saw, I get it, it's the Lions, but we saw four rushing touchdowns, 216 rushing yards combined. 4 different players found the end zone on the ground. Jalen Hurts, Kenneth Gainwell, Miles Sanders, Boston Scott. This is a home game for Philly. They have an identity. They can run the football. Minnesota has never been a good run defense. That's not going to change now that they have Zadarius Smith because he's not a run stopper. So I say all that to say the Eagles are going to win this game the same way that they won the game last week, the same way that they won games down the stretch in the end of the season last year and got into the playoffs, and that's by running the football. The Minnesota Vikings, it's going to be a close one. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I have the score being like, I'd say 24-21, but I do think though that I do strongly believe that the Eagles are going to run the Vikings defense into the ground. And that's all they have to do, because as soon as that attrition sets in for the Vikings defensively, then Jalen Hurts can start to rely more on Dallas Goedert. He can start to rely more on A.J. Brown, who, despite not scoring a touchdown, still had, 116 or 112 yards receiving last week in his Eagles debut. And I get it. It's against the Lions, but that still counts. That's why I have the Eagles. It's going to be a good one. Unfortunately, though, we're going to have to wait. It's going to be really good, and it could be a playoff preview potentially. Unfortunately, we're going to have to wait until Monday night, at the end of Monday night, to see whether or not I can who wins the pick'em. That's just kind of how fate has it. And again, I promise you, we do not make our picks at the same time. This is just how fate has it. I'm sure as the week and the season goes on, we'll have different picks. We are slightly over. We're going to wrap up right here, right now. Before we go, though, we both know who we have winning. I showed you guys the graphic. We have both have the Chargers beating the Chiefs tonight in 16 minutes. But can we get a score prediction, Payton, for Chargers Chiefs tonight?
I want this one to be electric. Give me the Chargers winning 31-30.
I'm taking Chargers by a touchdown, 32-30 or 35-28. I get that Pat Mahomes played great. J.C. Jackson's making his debut tonight for the Chargers, and it's going to be fantastic. Justin Herbert was absolutely electric in week 1. He's going to continue that. I am mildly concerned about Keenan Allen not being there, but this is the game where Austin Eckler proves to the world that he's a top 5 running back in football. So thank you guys for watching. We are a couple seconds over, but we're wrapping up right now. I appreciate you guys for sticking into us. You guys still have more than enough time to make sure you guys get on your couches and get comfy for Thursday Night Football tonight. Chiefs hosting the Chargers in what is their first AFC West duel of the season. The Chargers looking to remain perfect in the AFC West after a win against Las Vegas Raiders this past Sunday in week 1. So for Payton, I'm Marcus, and this was the rundown with Payton and Marcus. Thank you guys for watching. As always, man, you guys take it easy.